Hello there. We will start this marketing session on services marketing with a practical approach. We go to lesson 18, which is the service quality part 2. So, here we look at the gap model of service quality, the dimensions of service quality, and how service quality can be measured. So, first we see the gap model of service quality. Now, Parasuraman, Berry and Zetmal, they wrote about the gap model of service quality in 1985. So, here you see that there are various gaps like gap 1, gap 2, gap 3, gap 4 and gap 5. So, the first gap is between customer needs and expectations and management perception of customer requirements. That means, customers have certain needs and expectations, but the management they perceive something slightly different from what customers need and expectations are, and therefore, there is a difference between these two, and that gives rise to what is called the gap 1 or the requirements gap. Next, there is certain perception about customer requirements by the management, and there is the service design and delivery specifications. So, whatever be the management perception, they prepare design and delivery specifications for the service to be delivered. Now, there might be a small gap between what management perceives and what the delivery specifications are. So, the gap between perception of requirements and the delivery specifications is called the gap 2 or the design gap. Then we come to gap 3. So, here service the service design and delivery specifications are written down by the management, and the same is communicated to the employees who would deliver the service, but the actual delivery of service is not in conformance to the specifications. So, that is called the conformance gap or the third gap. Then we have gap 4, which is the communication gap. So, here we see that there is a customer perception of service which forms when the customer has experienced the delivery and conformation to specifications, experienced the service. Same thing when the company communication about service delivery and specification. So, some promotion or communication the company makes about the service delivery and specification, and that is different from the actual delivery and conformation to specifications. Now, the communication made by the company is different from the actual delivery, and therefore, it is called the communication gap. So, these are the two gaps, gap 4, that is the communication gap. Then we have some perception of service, and that perception of service and the customer's needs and expectations, there is a big gap, that is called the satisfaction gap. That means, customer was perceiving something about the service and they were delivered something worse than what they were perceiving. So, that is the satisfaction gap. So, needs and perceptions are different and gives rise to gap 5. Similarly, the company communication about the service is different from the customer needs and expectations. Okay. Or rather, the company communication about the service gives rise to the customer needs and expectations, and these customer needs and expectations are different from customer perception of service, and that is called the satisfaction gap. Now, this gap 5 is the most important gap, because it is directly linked with the satisfaction that customers will get when the services are performed or delivered to the customer. So, the company has to look at these 5 gaps and has to bridge these gaps, but the most important gap is the satisfaction gap, which the company must bridge. So, Professors Parasuraman, Berry and Zethamal, as I told earlier, published the gap model of service quality in 1985. According to this model, 5 gaps lead to poor quality of services delivered to a customer. The gaps must be closed in order to deliver excellent quality. We would now discuss the different gaps in more detail. So, we come to the first gap, which is the requirements gap. Now, this gap follows from management's ignorance of the customer requirements. So, customers have certain requirements, but management is ignorant about those requirements, and they think that customers would need some requirements which is different from the customer's actual needs. So, this gap can be addressed by taking the following steps. First is adequate market research orientation. This includes conducting sufficient market research about customer requirements. Instead of basing management decisions on intuition or gut feeling and incorporating the conclusions into service design and delivery. So, management must go for adequate market research rather than just use their gut feeling about what customers may need or require. Next is adequate upward communication. So, this includes adequate direct communication between customers and management, adequate communication between customers and the service personnel, and adequate communication between service personnel and the management regarding the requirements of customers. Third way to bridge the requirements gap is the adequate focus on customer relationships. This includes proper market segmentation and carefully marketing to the intended segment, interacting with the customers while treating them as long-term relationships instead of treating them as short-term transactions, and focusing on understanding and serving current customers instead of running after acquiring new customers. So, it is always better to serve and retain current customers instead of running after acquiring new customers, because it is cheaper to and more profitable to serve current customers than to acquire new customers. So, acquiring new customers requires a lot of investment, while serving current customers can be done much cheaper and keep the customers satisfied and delighted, so that they tell others also about this service, and so many people start purchasing the service. Adequate service recovery. This includes having a process of understanding why a customer was dissatisfied with a faulty service delivery, delivering the correct service to the aggrieved customer, learning the lessons and incorporating the lessons into future service delivery. So, the requirements gap can be bridged by adequate market research orientation, adequate upward communication, adequate focus on customer relationships, and adequate service recovery. Next, we go to the second gap, which is the design gap. This gap is about building an incorrect service design and incorporating unsatisfactory service standards. This gap can be addressed in the following manner. Proper service design. This includes having a systematic service design process leading to clear delivery and connecting the design and the services mix to the positioning of the service in the minds of the customer. Incorporating customer driven standards. This includes having a process of eliciting the standards of service delivery at each moment of truth from our customers. The company must adhere to these service standards and not fall below the customer specified levels. Appropriate servicescape and physical evidence. This includes having appropriate design and construction of a comfortable servicescape to meet the needs of customers and service personnel in production and consumption of services, adequate maintenance and updating of the servicescape, and developing physical evidences such as servicescape merchandise in line with the expectations of the customers. So, everywhere the expectations, what management think as the requirements of the customer, that has to be converted into exact service specifications, so that the requirements of the customers can be met easily. Third is the conformance gap. This gap is about service personnel not delivering to established standards and procedures. This gap can be addressed by taking these measures like effective human resource policies. This includes effective recruitment, clear service roles, ensuring proper employee technology job fit, appropriate evaluation and compensation systems, adequate empowerment to be able to serve the customer up to his or her expectations, adequate control over situations, and excellent teamwork, keeping customer satisfaction as the main goal. Properly educated customers. This includes customers fulfilling their roles and responsibilities and affecting other customers positively. Good relations with service intermediaries. This includes clarity over the roles of the intermediaries like agents, franchises, brokers, retailers, etc., appropriate empowerment, and inculcating the discipline of taking customers and their requirements seriously and endeavoring to meet those to the satisfaction of the customer, and having systems to control the quality and consistency with which intermediaries deliver the services to the customers and the brand. And fourth, successfully matching demand and supply. So, we will look at this part in more detail later on, but currently it is sufficient to say that this matching includes the ability to divert peak hour customers to lean hours and capacity to cross train employees for smoothly handling customers and delivering services during peak hours while adhering to service standards. So, in order to ensure that the service personnel deliver as per the specifications, we have 4 measures. One is effective human resource policies, that is the employees are trained very well. They properly educated customers. So, customers are also educated properly to absorb or to take the services and to co-create the services with the service delivery personnel. Good relationships with service intermediaries. So, with brokers, franchises, retailers, agents, etc., there has to be good relationships so that they can deliver in time and as per the design, conforming to the design. And finally, successfully matching the demand and supply, because service demand and supply usually do not meet because at peak hours there are more people to say dine in a restaurant, but at that time the number of seats becomes less, while in non-peak hours there are many seats left, many tables left, but there are few personnel to take these services. So, that is why it is important to successfully match demand and supply. So, these are these 4 points, these 4 strategies can help to close gap 3, which is the conformance gap. Coming to gap 4, which is the communication gap. So, this gap is about the difference between actual delivery of service and the promises and perceptions communicated during advertising and promotion of services. So, you must ensure that you do not communicate or promote your services in such a manner that the perception of the service, that is when customers are receiving the service, they perceive the service in a certain manner and there is no difference between this perception of service and the actual communications that you made about the service to the customers. So, having integrated marketing communications. So, this include maintaining consistency among all communications about the service offering, proper marketing and communication about the service to employees, and ensuring proper interactive communication among service personnel and customers in order to give them the correct perception of service. So, the communication should be such that the perceived service matches closely with the communication that is made to the customers. Then under promising and over delivering. This is a very good strategy, because it is better to promise less and deliver more, because when customers receive more than what they expect, they are likely to be delighted about this service. And finally, adequate horizontal communications. So, this include having adequate communications throughout the company and her collaborators about the services, so that no gaps and confusions arise due to difference in knowledge between the various arms of the service company. So, horizontal communications with other parties or players who all deliver the service, that communication gap should be reduced, and they should deliver exactly how the service, what and how the services are to be delivered as is perceived by the management about the requirements of the service. Then we come to the fifth gap, which is the satisfaction gap. As I told earlier, that this satisfaction gap is the most important gap which must be looked into. This is the gap between the perceptions of service actually delivered to the customers and their expectations of service, mainly from the communications and promotions that customers receive from the services delivery company. So, this gap is between customers expectation and perception. This gap can be closed by closing the 4 gaps discussed earlier. So, all the 4 gaps which were discussed earlier, the if those gaps can be closed, then it will automatically lead to closure of the satisfaction gap. In 1982, Professor Christian Gronrus wrote that service quality can be of 2 types, that is technical quality, that is the quality of the outcome, and the functional quality, that is quality related to the manner in which or how the services have been delivered. So, we generally do not discuss about technical quality, because the technical quality would vary from service to service or from service product to service product, but the functional quality tends to remain same over different kinds of services, and we are going to discuss the functional quality of the services. So, what are the dimensions of functional service quality? Based on their research, Professor Parasuraman, Berry and Zetmal advanced 5 dimensions of functional service quality in 1988. These are tangibles, reliability, assurance, responsiveness, empathy, and we have those elaborated here. So, reliability is the ability to perform the promised service dependably and accurately. Responsiveness is the willingness to anticipate customer needs, help customers, and provide prompt services. Assurance is the knowledge and courtesy of employees and their ability to inspire trust and confidence in the customer's mind. Empathy, caring, individualized attention that is provided to the customers, and tangibles, appearance of physical facilities, equipment, personnel, and communication materials. So, how do you measure service quality? It is said in management that whatever you want to improve, you should be able to measure. Whatever you want to manage, you should be able to measure. So, the service quality measurement also has a questionnaire which is very popular in social services. In order to measure something, we use a questionnaire or an inventory schedule, or a questionnaire or a schedule inventory for taking the for interviewing the people who have taken this service or who have discussed this service. So, the 5 dimensions of service quality discussed earlier form part of the 44 ServQual questionnaire used for measuring service quality. 22 items in the questionnaire are used to measure customer expectations of a particular service, and another 22 items are used to measure customer perceptions of the performance of the service. Although other authors have advanced other dimensions of service quality based on the particular service under research, the ServQual dimensions have been largely accepted as intuitively appealing and have been widely used to measure the quality of services. So, many other types of services measurement instruments like bank qual or health qual or things like that. So, this type of service quality measurement schedules or measurement battery has been developed and has been discussed by various authors. However, those are all dependent or related to the service quality questionnaire by PBZ, that is Parasuraman, Berry and Zetmal, who have advanced it in 1988. So, this service quality questionnaire consists of 44 items, 22 items for the expectation of service and 22 items for the perception of service. Now, what as published in my book, we have this 22 items questionnaire, the 44 item questionnaire to be converted into a 22 item questionnaire, which measures customer perception of a service performance against their expectations of service. So, that questionnaire is given in the next slide. So, in this slide we see there is a 22 item questionnaire, and the directions are the following set of statements relate to your perceptions of performance of XYZ, where XYZ is a service company, against your expectations from XYZ. So, what is the performance? So, it is much less than expected, means this service dimension or this service attribute is much less than expected from the company, or it is less than expected. So, the this is the performance compared to the expectation of the service. So, there are 22 items in this service, you see 1 to 22, there are 22 items, and these are the expectations against the performance against the expectations for the service. So, we have XYZ as a service company. So, we say XYZ has up to date equipment. Now, is it much less than expected? Is it less than expected? Is it same as expected? Is it more than expected, or is it much more than expected? So, people would be required to tick mark on any of these 5 depending upon what is their perception as compared to the expectations of the service. So, let us now see these 22 items. So, the first item is XYZ has up to date equipment. Next is XYZ's physical facilities are visually appealing. XYZ's employees are well dressed and appear neat. The appearance of the physical facilities of XYZ is in keeping with the type of service provided. So, these items which are in purple color, they measure the tangibles part or dimension of service quality. So, this is the tangibles dimension with just 4 items. Next, we go to item number 5. When XYZ promises to do something by a certain time, it does so. When you have problems, XYZ is sympathetic and reassuring. XYZ is dependable. XYZ provides its services at the time it promises to do so, and XYZ keeps its records accurately. So, these 5 points relate to the reliability dimension of service quality. Then XYZ tells customers exactly when services will be performed. You receive prompt service from XYZ's employees. Employees of XYZ are always willing to help customers. Employees of XYZ are too busy to respond to customer requests promptly. So, this is the responsiveness dimension of services quality. Then number 14 is you can trust employees of XYZ. You feel safe in your transactions with XYZ's employees. Employees of XYZ are polite. Employees get adequate support from XYZ to do their jobs well. So, this is the assurance part of the service quality from XYZ. And finally, XYZ gives you individual attention. Employees of XYZ give you personal attention. Employees of XYZ know what your needs are. XYZ has your best interests at heart, and XYZ has operating hours convenient to all their customers. So, these 5 items relate to the empathy dimension of service quality. So, as we have discussed, and this is very important, these dimensions of service quality: reliability, responsiveness, assurance, empathy and tangibles. So, each of these 5 dimensions are measured by 4 to 5 items, and therefore, 22 items are able to measure these 5 dimensions, and when these 22 items the customer tick marks on these 22 items, then you know that which of the items are doing well, which of the items are doing worse than expected or less than expected, and which of the items are doing more than expected, and therefore customers may be delighted with those services. Accordingly, with the diagnosis that can be done with the help of this questionnaire, you can know what you have to enhance and what you do not have to enhance, or what is doing very well, and accordingly you can improve your services in those dimensions, and again measure the services using the service quality items, and see where the services delivering company remains in on a particular day or particular date. So, you can improve the services of the company by requesting your customers to check mark this questionnaire, and then you can see which is being done well and which are being done not to the expectations of the customers, and you can improve them. Thank you very much for attending this session. I hope it helps. Thank you.